Congratulations. Clap for yourself. Clap. You've picked the right video. You've picked the right video. Yes, pat yourself on the back. Yeah, you did it. You did it. Congratulations. Today we are going to discuss how to sample in FL Studio. This is going to be very thorough. If you watch either one of my 808 tutorials, it's going to be thorough like that. So with that, strap in. Let's get to it. Before we go, please put a like on the video. First thing you want to do, of course, is drag your sample in. You could either put that on the playlist or the sampler. Doesn't matter. The first thing you have to do is get it into the DAW. So for the sample, I want to give credit to Zach Medlin. Don't know him from a can of paint, but this is royalty-free music. A link will be in the description if you want to check out the full track. So one of the first things you do after you get the sample in, I would recommend listen to the whole song. So the first half that we're going to do is basically slicing the sections of the sample. So after you pick which parts you want to do, you're going to slice the sample so that it fits. Now there are two methods to doing that, and I'm going to show you both. The first method is going to be the playlist method, which is the method you see everybody do. The second method is something that I've used long before tutorials or even a thing on the internet, the EDISON method. So let's say you got the sample on the sampler and you didn't drag it directly to the playlist. What you can do is press and hold it, drag it, and it'll be on the playlist now. So when you're doing the playlist method, the first thing that you want to do is tempo map. This is live music. So what you want to do is right click the tempo and then push tap. And what you're going to do is listen and tap for the tempo. Now, if you get a sample from somebody like me, Splice, or any other creator, it's already going to have a tempo, so this won't apply to that. But if you're sampling from a song, especially a live song, this is something you're going to want to do. So we're going to play the track and I'm going to tap the tempo out. So we're somewhere in the ballpark of 112. Let's play it. So you see it's not on at first, but one of the things that's going on is we got an ounce of silence. So let's get rid of that silence. One thing that we could do, easy way to get rid of that, is just by boop, trim. Just going to the sampler and pushing the trim all the way up so we don't even have to cut it. It trims all the silence off the front and the back. So you see how much better the tempo maps up? Now the tempo is not going to be exact, and that's because when you're working with live musicians, it's not mechanical, it's not quantized, it's live, it's real. So nothing is going to follow a mechanical tempo that's live. Now you notice when we get deeper in the song to where I want to sample, everything isn't in alignment on the tempo because, again, it's not perfect, it's real. That's the part that I want to sample. You can either go to the horseshoe magnet or you can go to the one up here, put it on none, and you want to chop out the part that you want to work with. So that right there, I want to work with that. I'm not going to chop these precise right now, but what I want to do, you see this transient? That transient, which a transient is basically a spike in the audio waveform. That's where the next bar begins. I want to make sure I don't cut off too much over here and like leave it out or anything like that. So I'm going to put it a little bit behind. We'll just take off that fat later. So boom, we take this, move the slice all the way over to the left. Now I'm gonna take a little bit of the vocal part too. So I found another part, just a couple bars that I wanna sample. So that right there would mark the start. So I want somewhere around the start of that transient that starts the bar. Finding out what it means to be on our own. Now that one right there, boom. So we're gonna chop that. From there, I'm gonna erase the track. I have my two slices that I wanna work with. I'm gonna mute this on one track and we're gonna focus on this. So now this is what we do. I wanna listen to this first. And we are going to chop right there, right where it starts. Listen to it with the metronome. Now that's perfect. So now I'm gonna go from none on the magnet. I'm gonna go to main again so it locks, and boom, I'm gonna chop that off. And now for the second sample, I'm gonna bring it to the front. See where that transient hits, that's where it starts. So again, I'm gonna go back to none, cut it off, and you see we got a little bit of space right there. You see we got a little bit of space. So let's listen to it real quick. So this is where in the playlist method, we talk about stretching and all that stuff. Now, the first thing that we want to do is make sure these two samples are separate. Meaning if I stretch this, it doesn't stretch the whole song out or anything like that. So you have two choices with this, two choices. The first thing you could do is click on either one of them, make unique. Now, when you make it unique, watch the sampler. It clones it so that it's its own entity, but when you go into the sampler, both of them are the whole song. If you're just doing this, that doesn't really matter. That doesn't really matter. I'm going to show you an instance where it'll matter a bit later. But right now, these two can independently do what they want. The other option is to make unique a sample. Now, being that I already made this second one, unique is going to have this type of message. You don't even have to worry about that. We're just going to go to yes, and it's going to ask me to save it in a folder. So you can save it, and now when you look at this unique sample, now it's just that part as a waveform. Now, before we get to stretching, let's talk about reversing very quickly, reversing a sample. Now, this sample represents the unique sample that was saved. This one right here represents the sample that's still a cut of the whole song. Now, let's say we wanted to get freaky with it and reverse one of the chops and things like that. It would be best to save it as a unique sample, because when I go to the unique sample that was saved and just reverse it, it just reverses what's already there. But peep this, when we have the one that's the whole song and I click reverse on it, it's gonna reverse the whole song, and that whole chop is gonna be a whole different part. So when you plan on doing something like reversing a certain part of a sample or even reversing the sample, you want to click make unique a sample and save the sample so you could just have that part. So now that we understand the difference between make unique, which just clones the track, and make unique a sample, which actually takes that sample and saves it, now we can discuss stretching and binding the sample. So now what you want to do when a sample doesn't fit 100% to a bar, you want to zoom in real tight, zoom in real tight. You want to click this right here. This lets you stretch audio clips on the playlist. You click that and you drag it to the end. Oh my goodness. And I did it on none of it lined up exactly. Let's listen to it. Finding out what it means to be on our own. Finding out what it means to be on our own. That's good. Now, let's be real. I could rock with it like that, but you see, as far as these transients, they're a bit off. So just for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to bind the sample. So when you have a certain part that's getting off like this, you pretty much either want to take a whole nother bar, half a bar, you want to chop it again. So we're going to go to none, and we're going to go to the first transient. And what we're trying to do is get these to be on the grid. We want to get the transients to be on the grid. So what we're going to do for this right now, we're just going to make it unique. We're not going to save anything else. So boom, it's just going to clone the track. Now with the new FL Studio, you have a few options. The first thing you could do, they got the crossfaders built in, so you could just slide that and it's going to crossfade it. And then guess what? We zoom back in like we did over here and we stretch this out to the end. Boom. Now let's look at where those transients are landing. Still not the most on time for some of them. So even then, if I wanted to do this, if I wanted to get this one to hit more on time, we could do the same thing and make unique, drag it in, stretch it out. Now let's listen to it. Finding out what it means to be on our own. Now you see that? You see that? You see what just happened? It just got weird on the pitch. When it gets weird on the pitch, this is all you do. Don't even trip. Just double click the sample, click the pitch, click reset. Just do that for the ones that you stretched out so you don't got to deal with the weirdness. Now let's play it again. Finding out what it means to be on our own. It sounds seamless. It sounds seamless. So this is the other option. If you want to do it on different tracks and you want to control the crossfade a little more, what you can do after you click off the stretch, you can click this X right here. It's going to show you the crossfading editing controls, and you could drag it. And you could drag it however you want to drag it. Finding out what it means to be on our Now look, it doesn't sound the best, but I'm just showing you the features. You want to be more subtle with it. Now let's wrap up the playlist method for slicing the sample by doing this. So we're going to take the sample and lay it how we want it to lay in the playlist. So now after you have it laid out, you want to render it as a wave sample, this whole thing, so that it's more convenient for the future. So you could do that simply by going to the save as and then clicking wave and then rendering. What I choose to do instead, I go to the mixer, I click this red button to arm the track as far as the master track. I go to disc recording and I go to render arm tracks to wave files. This is very simple. It's going to render the whole thing. So we got the whole sample is one wave. Now we can drag it out here and we got one whole big wave file. So that is the playlist method as far as slicing your samples and aligning them. So now what I'm going to do is show you the EDISON method, which again, this is what I've been doing for years. And this is how I usually worked up until recently, until, you know, you got to conform and do what everybody else is doing because YouTube and all that stuff. But I've been rocking with FL since FL Studio 3. So like, you know, before tutorials and stuff like that, that's how I was rocking. So this is what you do. You put the whole song at EDISON, stretch it out, you zoom in. Now we're only going to go to the one part where this transient hits. We're going to drag the red right there. So we drag the first red right there. Now you see where that second transient ends. I'm going to go and I'm going to drag this in. I'm going to go right here and drag it right there. Now this is what we do. This is how you make sure it's a good loop. You push this button right here and just listen to it, make sure it loops proper. Now see, with that, you know, you have a good loop off rip. So what we're going to do is just take this right here, and we're going to drag that onto the playlist. It's going to drag out the selection that we just had. It's going to be its own individual waveform. So we didn't have to make unique or anything like that. It's going to be saved to some weird folder. If you want to know what folder it's saved to, all you got to do is go to the sample and click load sample. Now you'll know where it's saved. It's saved where all the other slices are saved and stuff like that, blah, blah, blah. And we'll get to where the samples can go later. But once you have that, this is another thing that you can do. Now to me, this is the cheat code, and you could use this with the other method instead of doing all the binding and stretching and stuff like that. But being that we come straight out with a unique sample, meaning that this is just a section cut out, all I have to do is go to time, and if I cut out one bar, put it at one bar. Woo! You don't gotta time it up. You don't gotta make sure it's right or nothing like that. It's right there. And if you cut out 2 bars, you push 2 bars. Let's listen to it. It's very simple. It makes it easy. I haven't seen anybody do this, and it's something I've been doing for years. And it's a very smooth way to sample. Now, as far as all the consolidating and stuff like that I did from the last method, you can still do that. But this makes it a lot quicker and a lot easier, in my opinion, when you got a good sample, instead of chopping it all out here and stretching it and doing all of that stuff. That's my personal method as far as how I do it. I have not seen anybody on YouTube or just on the internet do it like that. So now with those two, you are equipped to go and begin sampling and just putting the drums over everything. You could just loop a sample. You're good right there. But what if you want to get freaky with it? What if you want to flip the sample? What if you want to do all types of stuff? We already discussed reversing, so you know how to do that. Put that in your arsenal. The next thing that we're going to discuss is chopping. So the first thing I want to show you is a new feature that is in FL Studio that not a lot of people have talked about. When you click this right here, they have a chop option now. You can do time based, you can do repeating, you could do all types of stuff. So let's say you want to do it to where you rearrange it and stuff like that. You could chop in beats, boom. It already chops it up. So we could just rearrange this however we want to rearrange it and just do some loopy stuff with it. We could just do that. You see how I just did that? So that's one thing you could do. Now the other thing, they got a bunch of other stuff on here, like, you know, complex stuff. Let's click that. Like you could get jiggy with it automatically to where you just really don't have to think of too much. Let's do Hitmaker. See, it's nasty. It's nasty. Yo, shout out to ImageLine. Shout out to ImageLine. That's a great feature. Like you don't even have to be like, oh, how am I going? Like, it's the sauce is right in the app now. So it's crazy. Now let's say you want to get primitive with it. Let me chill. Let's say you want to get more control over it. You want to, let's just say it like that. Let's say you want to use a slicer. You still want to use a slicer. Because you see people using it all over the app, you wanna use it, no problem. Let's talk about the Fruity Slicer. So the first thing that you wanna do, you wanna open up the Fruity Slicer and you wanna drag your sample into it. It's gonna lay it out like this. Very choppy. So the first thing that you do to set up some order is set the chop range. So you want the slices to be 1/4 beat, 1/2 beat, a full beat, all that stuff. Let's put it at a beat. And when you go here, you could do all types of stuff. You could reverse it, And all that does is reverse the order of the chops that you have. It doesn't actually reverse the sample. But if you do want to reverse one of the chops, after you click a section, you could click right there. So let's listen. Ain't that fire? That's fire. Now, what about the choppiness and the all that stuff? Well, for that, what you do is control this. This is a stretch right here. It stretches each part of the sample. So let's bring it all the way down just so you can hear the extreme. Takes a lot away from the sample. Let's move it all the way up so you can hear the extreme. It drags the sample all the way out. So what you want to do is, in most cases, you'll just push that up just a little bit, just a little bit. Now, if you get confused, you can right click it, click reset. That'll be cool. You could also click auto detect. Sounds good to me. Now with this, let's talk about pitching the sample. It's very simple. If you got the loop like the one I set right here, all you have to do is go to this pitch knob. There's gonna be a notification in the upper left-hand corner for pitch shift sense. You always want to make sure it's a multiple of 100. Make sure it ends with 2 zeros, because anything in between that is gonna have you in a weird tone. So now if we shift it up, it's all good. Shift it down. Now, one thing I forgot to mention, because we did all types of stretching, when you get the new sample, what you want to do is go in here and click stretch just to make sure it stays on time, even though it's going to stay on time regardless. You just want to do that just to make sure when you switch the tempo, everything stays in place. Now, when we go to the slicer and we talk about pitch, same thing. You're still going to see the pitch shift, whatever sense. Make sure it's a multiple of 100. Make sure it ends with 2 zeros. And one last tidbit about pitch shifting. Now, in some cases, you may have the sampler set to auto, and that's something that happens automatically, you know, when you put a sample in there in some cases. And with a sample like this that's rendered, it has loop points, and the loop points usually make sure that it's tempo synced in FL Studio. You know, it's gonna be tempo synced. So no matter where you move it, you know, it's gonna stay to the same tempo. So when you got that type of dynamic, now you see it says restretch all channels now. What you want to do, instead of me just telling you to click yes on that, you might like the pitch that it went to. You want to take an ear note of what you hear, and then from there, you could either keep it the same and just let it rock. But what I would recommend, so that you have more control over it, is to say yes and then go back in and turn the pitch wheel until you get the same pitch that you heard. And then after that, you will be Gucci. Now, after all of that, all you have to do is just lay the drums out. It's that simple. With that being said, I gave a very thorough outline of most of the knowledge that I have about sampling. With that being said, leave a comment, let me know what you thought about the video. And if you enjoyed the video, please subscribe. I have all types of tutorials like this. I know I'm not like the biggest mega mondo YouTuber and stuff like that, but listen, you get some very good game here. You get some very good game on this channel. I'm always putting out good games, so be sure to lock in, subscribe, I will see y'all another day. Somehow, some way. I'm out.